And hello, everybody. Welcome back to College Football Coast to Coast. It is championship week for us here on the show. Season has flown by, Tyler.
Yeah, it sure has.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that we are already here. It is basically week 13 of the season for us here in college football, and a lot of great games to talk about. But of course, we always start off with our recap from last week and some crazy games that really determine the makeup of what could become a really good college football playoff season and some great New Year's Six bowl games. So we'll jump right into it, man, and we'll always start where we do, of course, in the ACC. We had a great one here, SEC ACC matchup here for the Battle of Florida. Florida puts up a really good fight in this one. They travel to Tallahassee. Uh, I dare say Tallahassee's a tougher place to play than Gainesville. So this is a great game for both teams. It's really about last possession here, and Florida State made the most of it. And controversial call towards the end of this game kind of swung the game towards Florida State's way. A great positive offensive movement for both teams, and Florida State ultimately holds on. They were at number 16 at the time. I'm assuming based on that when they're going to move up just a couple of spots, not too many. But what's your assessment of this game? I know this is a tough one, to look at from Florida's perspective. You've had a rough year. You start the season off well. You beat Utah, but really been downhill from then.
Yeah, really the perspective I have is just here from Florida State. Mike Norvell, Florida State could have just fired him. I mean, they fired, Willie Taggart, who didn't do that great. Mike Norvell wasn't doing great in his first couple of years, coming from Memphis. But yeah, this was his best year yet. They finished the season at 9-3, start the season with a big win, LSU, New Orleans, and then they closed it out against their rivals. Florida's beating them in the 3 years. Like this rivalry is back and forth. Florida State from 2013 to 2018, they got a win in every year, and then for the past 3 years, we've seen Florida really dominate this series, and now it's looking like the pendulum is swinging in towards the Seminoles' favor. But yeah, this was an offensive onslaught, and what a way to start rivalry weekend. We had the Egg Bowl Thursday night to get us started. Then this was the night game, and this was just the fans stormed the field. One of my coworkers actually went to that game, and they said that like a 50-year-old man broke his ankle, like the bone like came right out of his. It was like sticking out, and like all the police and ambulance was sorting, but it like they were telling me it was like a 10-foot drop, pretty much. Like the wall is not as like pretty steep, so it's like it's a job for Florida State, but it was definitely well deserved for the fans to storm the field, beating your rival. And for Florida, I mean, their defense really is the reason why that they're only at 6-6 right now. I mean, you can pin it on coaching, but it's the first year, so I'm not really gonna like say like Florida needs to look somewhere else. But yeah, this off both defenses, had talent, but the way that Jordan Travis was playing in this game, I think that he should just get a Player of the Year honors. I know that Drake May's been getting a lot of the hype, but Jordan Travis has been one of the main reasons why Florida State is where they're at now, and they're going to be in a good position next week whenever we're talking about the bowl games. I'm sure that Florida State, might not have to travel far. They might get even, the Camping World, the Cheez It Bowl actually now. I wanted to call it the Camping World. Now it's called the Cheez It Bowl. So that could be a possible they could travel, down south to Orlando and face off against the Big 12. But yeah, huge win. Put the season in perspective. This was really terrific A+ season for Florida State.
Absolutely. And moving on from our ACC, we'll head to the Big 12. This is a great shootout game here as well. Uh, Oklahoma travels down to Lubbock, Texas, and faces off against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Uh, Tech pulls it off in overtime, 51-48 here. Great win for them. I think this is fantastic for that Texas Tech program. They've had some upset wins this year that have really shaped out to be, what the Big 12 has been this year, and ultimately they've kind of helped TCU a little bit, get to where they are now with what they've done, what they did to Texas and some other teams along the way. So I think this is a great win for that Texas Tech program. They're on the rise, 51 points. is a lot of points. I mean, but it is Big 12 football, and most of the time, we don't see this reached to this extent. I mean, 99 points is a lot of points. So I mean, you're sticking around for a lot of fireworks during this game. But I feel like for me, there's a problem with Oklahoma. I think this season, I think everybody kind of notices it, but nobody's going to talk about it type thing. Uh, Oklahoma's got issues, and I think it starts at the coaching level. I do get that you get a new coach in there and you're trying to work out some kinks, but come on. I mean, like 48 points and you're still losing a football game is unacceptable from the eyes of most Big 12 and most D1 schools in the nation. So, I mean, this is a fall off season for Oklahoma. I think they've kind of started to fall off now, and I think they will be down there for the time being until they can get some solid recruiting in there. He did get a transfer quarterback, but the problem is he can't stay healthy. So I mean that's the biggest problem with Oklahoma. I think Texas Tech, great football program. That is probably the most uh, I would say well-rounded team in the Big 12, I would say, from position to position. It's just a bunch of team players that go out there, and a lot of times those team player teams really do succeed. And in their case, they have. I don't know what your thoughts on this game are, but I know you probably paid a little bit more attention to it than I did. I looked at some of the stuff in the recap after. I didn't watch this game.
Yeah, I didn't watch it either. But when I saw the score, I was like, man, this Oklahoma team, I thought that their defense was going to be a lot better. Brent Venables, had one of the best defenses every year at Clemson. But now, Oklahoma, going into the year, like I mentioned, like their defense should improve. And, it's just the same old deal that was happening with Lincoln Riley. And now that you're seeing, Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams gone, look what USC is doing. So I know that Oklahoma fans are definitely irked of that. Who knows? Like maybe Oklahoma could have been in that. The way that the Big 12 really shaped up. I mean, there was a lot of shakeup in the Big 12. Like who would have thought ECU and Kansas State would have been the top two teams? Texas got all the hype, and Texas Tech, like you mentioned, one of their bets was against that same Texas team, so they went 2-0, and the Red River beating teams. But yeah, this was a prototypical Big 12. I haven't seen many of those. The defense really has shown up more than it has in this conference. But on Saturday afternoon in Lubbock, it was already, back and forth battle. Both quarterbacks played a whale of a game, but the defenses in the end just didn't really make a stop. But it took Oklahoma missed field goal to really open up the door for Texas Tech to win this game. So you got to give credit to Texas Tech with the win. They already clinched a spot in the bowl eligibility, but this will, get momentum. Oklahoma first here. Brent Venables, 6-6, with the talent that they had. I know that they lost their star quarterback, but you bring in a guy like Dylan Gabriel who can win at UCF. So I feel like, we're given a lot of talk about, how like the down, how Miami's been struggling. That's probably worse than what Oklahoma has, because Miami, you bring in a new coach, you have Tyler Van Dyke, the ACC wasn't as strong was last year. Now that we're seeing with like the likes of Wake Forest and NC State. So yeah, disappointing year for Oklahoma, and you just got to look yourself in the mirror going into the offseason.
Yeah, and getting away from this game into the biggest game of the weekend.
The game.
Yeah, the game, as they say. Number 3, Michigan, the Wolverines headed to Columbus to play the number 2 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes in the Horseshoe. This game was a good game through about 3 quarters. Ohio State stuck with Michigan. Michigan just ran the football well. That was the key. We talked about last week. I said if Michigan's going to win this football game, they got to be able to run the football. And they had no problem with it. I mean, they collapsed Ohio State's edge rushers. Really, they had trouble getting to the running backs. Edwards played a fantastic game out of the backfield. JJ McCarthy played a well-rounded, balanced game. Nothing too crazy, nothing too conservative. It was right even keel the whole way, and I'm pretty sure that's how they drew it up for him to do that. In high pressure situations, give it to the running back and let him go to work. And Michigan's done that really well this year. So I mean, I don't think anybody saw this coming. A 45-23 blowout win. I mean, a 22-point win against your rival. I feel like it's also kind of a more of a defensive win for Michigan. Your defense comes up big twice in the fourth quarter to really stretch this lead out. And of course, they want to pour salt on the wound because of that rivalry. So I think that Ohio State has some stuff to go back and look at. I mean, they're banged up a little bit, so I do understand. But another thing is you know a lot of that Ohio State is a really good football team. I mean, that's the thing about it. I mean, they're putting up 50 plus a week. I mean, granted, they weren't playing the best teams in the country, but they're putting up 50 plus a week. Putting up 40 here should have been no problem for them, but it seemed like they struggled to figure it out offensively. So I
Yeah.
think yeah, I just feel like this is a learning and teaching moment for Ryan Day and CJ Stroud going forward. And I think we'll see some offseason changes within the coaching staff, just a little bit, maybe a couple. Of course, Ohio State likes to stick their vanilla coaching style. So we might see something different, but we might not. But a great win for Michigan here on the road.
Yeah, I feel like I was just watching last year's game all over again. I mean, it was a slow start for Michigan and JJ McCarthy. Ohio State, controlled that game. And Michigan, all of a sudden, they take deep shots and they get two back-to-back touchdowns to really flip the script. And like you mentioned, Blake Corum, started the game, but you could tell off the rip that he wasn't 100%. So they decided to bench him. I think he re-injured. He got re-injured. Got to give tip your cap to Donovan Edwards. I mean, I know that he's the backup, but he needs more credit. I mean, all the hype has been around the Heisman of Blake Corum, but Donovan Edwards had a terrific day. 2 touchdowns, over 200 yards rushing. Can just control the line of scrimmage once again, and that's what wins you these big games is controlling both the defensive and the offensive line of scrimmage. And Ohio State, not Jackson Smith and Jigba, was definitely crucial, for most of this season. I mean, we were talking for several weeks like, oh, this Michigan team is not that good. And then they show you they're pretty good. They might be better than last year's team. And now we're seeing, Cade McNamara entering the transfer portal. So it's looking like that the freshman quarterback is going to be the guy. Maize in yellow, it's in the maize and blue. Sorry, the maize to me is blue, so I get confused with that. But yeah, not really the question that I have is, this is a bad loss, for Ohio State. We're going to find out in a couple of minutes if they still have a path to the playoff. Are they going to be number 5 still? Or are they going to be number 6? I'm sure that we'll get that answer here in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, as Tyler hinted to, throughout this show, of course, this is a part of our live show right now. We're on Tuesday night, of course. We're mainly on Mondays. Tyler had a game, and I had some stuff going on, so we really couldn't. We really couldn't do it yesterday afternoon at 3. So we picked up here on Tuesday night. But of course, Tuesday nights at 6:00 Central Time, at least for y'all on the East Coast at 7. For the college football playoff rankings do come out in about 20 minutes, as Tyler said. So we'll be updating you guys live throughout the show on those rankings and where people sit, and kind of give you our opinion and talk about those teams a little bit throughout the show. But of course, we'll move along and we'll keep going and see where we get to once that kicks off and we get some names and teams rolling in. So that takes us off to our next one, Tyler, to the Pac-12. Oregon State gets a big touchdown, or I'm sorry, gets a 4-point win. I was looking at it wrong. They get a 4-point win over their rival, the Oregon Ducks. Oregon, this was one of those games I felt was a trap game for Oregon. Oregon State's a really good team this year. As you mentioned earlier, I was talking today, 9-3 season for Oregon State is a fantastic year in the Pac-12 for them. Oregon was sitting at number 9. They put up 34 points, but once again, defense cannot get it done. And if you're going to win some football games, defense has to get it done. Oregon State came into it ranked number 21. They took care of business. I think being at home was the difference in this one. Felt a little more comfortable. And all the credit goes to Oregon State's defense in the end there. They get a huge stop at the end of this game and ultimately seal the deal. So I feel like, Oregon State can be a team, that dark horse team in the Pac-12. And I think the Beavers will be there, next year and the next year. They think, you keep competing like this and you're at a smaller school, guys are going to start going there and they're going to start taking it to taking their talents over to some of the smaller schools just to get playing time, at that time, and you might get a start. So all the credit to Oregon State and the Beavers in this one.
A lot of credit for Oregon State. I mean, they were left to dead. A lot of the hype in the Pac-12 has been USC, and Oregon State's on their way to 9 3 years. So a really good season for. I mean, Oregon was up in this game. They controlled it. They were up 31-10. And I was like, uh-oh, this is Oregon's gonna. They're taken to the Pac-12 championship, and our pick of the Beavers pulling off the upset isn't going to look too good. So, but you're on the screen, 38-34. I mean, this team is just resilient. That's all I can think of. I mean, the way that their defense didn't look too great. I mean, they gave up 31 points early. They made some adjustments after the second quarter. They were able to lock it down, and they were able to hand the ball off effectively. They were able to be balanced. Like in the first half, they were just a completely different team. And so you got to give credit to Oregon State. They're definitely going to be a dark horse, especially with Washington. That's been a team that's just going to sneak up on you as well. They beat Washington State in the App Cup, finishing at 10-2, and they could be on their way to the Rose Bowl, depending if USC beats Utah. But yeah, a lot of marks for Oregon. I mean, they've really had their way in this game. I mean, if you win this game, you go on and face the Pac-12 championship, and if you win that one, you'll probably get into the Rose Bowl. But now, I mean, it's probably going to be going to the Alamo Bowl, a bowl game like that. So this is definitely a loss that's not only going to affect real season hopes, but their bowl hopes as well. So, but got to give credit to the Beavers. They deserved it.
Yeah, absolutely. And moving back down to the South, a great one here. This is another SEC ACC matchup here. The unranked South Carolina Gamecocks. They go into Clemson, who was ranked at number 8, kind of sitting there on the fence. Where with this win, would they have consideration to make the playoff? Is there a way? With Ohio State losing, was there a way for them to get in and a path to get in? But those hopes were dashed once again by the South Carolina Gamecocks, 31-30 here. They get the big win. Fantastic game from Spencer Rattler. As we stated last week, I won't spend long talking about South Carolina, but this is a great season for them. Fantastic for Shane Beamer and that team. I feel like, his remarks after the game in the press conference were the best. Talking about how the committee should really look at South Carolina's season. And South Carolina kind of made their own playoff out of all of it in the end, and really had a great season. And they'll build from it, and they'll be back in SEC contention, I feel like, in the East. Hopefully giving Georgia a run for their money. And it's about time, I think, we see Clemson start to fall off a little bit. They're losing games that they need to be winning by 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's the thing about it. And it wasn't just a fluke. I mean, you beat Tennessee the previous week, who's ranked at 5. You go in and you go to Clemson and say, hey, we can do it again. And you get a 1-point victory on the road. So great for the USC Gamecocks here. I think it's fantastic what they've done with this season and turned it into an 8-4 good year, and going to get a good bowl game out of it.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Clemson did have their way. They did have to the playoff, but now those hopes are dashed by losing to the rival. I mean, South Carolina coming off of a big win, you could have just laid flat, but they did control this first half. I mean, DJ Uiagalelei wasn't looking great. It was just handing the ball off to your guy, Will Shipley. He's really been the main. Uiagalelei has not been great. I mean, he had a good first half of the season, but the second half he's been playing like his yourself. And like you mentioned, are we really seeing a Clemson fall? I mean, last year we've seen them lose 2 games in the regular season. Once again, 2 games as well. So now they're just on back to going 10-2 and haven't made the playoff, which will now be their second straight season of not making the playoff. So it's definitely a question. We'll see if they can handle their business against North Carolina, a team that's on the spiral as well. But you got to give credit to South Carolina's special teams in this one. That punt with 2 minutes left really sealed the deal. Antoine Wells Jr. had a good game, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns. And like you mentioned, Spencer, I mean, in the end, the stat line wasn't pretty, but he got the job done. And the best thing about this was South Carolina did Clemson's rule. They stormed the field and on their home, not only on their home stadium, so they stormed the field on back games, but at Clemson Stadium, who their tradition is storming the field. So I definitely love that.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Way to take advantage of the opportunity there and spoil their party. So great for them. Of course, you guys know we close out the recap with our group of 5, and of course, this is really the the end all be all here for the American and who was going to host for the American Championship that we'll be discussing here in a couple minutes. But Tulane gets a field goal victory over the Cincinnati Bearcats in Cincinnati. This is a great win for Tulane. Tulane really should be a one-loss team, I think,
Yep.
this year. I mean, you lose a tough and weird game in a rivalry game against Southern Miss. I think that this is a great building block for them going into the American Championship. Um, Tulane's a fantastic team on defense too, and I think the best defensive team in the American by far. Secondary is unbelievable. Linebackers are great. Cincinnati played a good, hard-fought game here. I mean, holding Tulane to 27 points deserves a little bit of credit, but losing games at home in Cincinnati has not been on the menu recently. So I think that Tulane was happy to go into the Green Wave, take over the Cincinnati Bearcats in this one, 27-24.
Man, I wish I would roll with the wave. I don't know why I went off the train, and I was rolling with Tulane for so many weeks. I just thought, at home, Cincinnati with their defense will be able to stop Tulane. And Michael Pratt, the veteran quarterback, had a really good game. And then the defense is just everything that Tulane has become. Going from 2-10 now. Hosting the American Athletic Championship in a rematch against UCF, a team that they lost to 2 weeks ago in Stadium, and did get some good news. Coach Willie Fritz isn't going to Georgia Tech. I know that there was rumors there, so they're able to be getting their head coach back for a very long time. And now, if they win, they're going to go to either the Cotton Bowl or the Orange Bowl. What a story that would be for the Green Wave in Cincinnati. I know that we'll get to the news about their head coach leaving for a Power 5 program. So we'll see, what the Cincinnati program will now become. Fickle is out the door, but this was a really good game. I mean, this is prototypical American. I mean, 27-24, grinded out game the fourth quarter. I mean, both teams shared the lead as well, but in the end, you got to tip your hat. What a story it's been.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, fantastic for Tulane, and they really, I think, will be the king of the American here in the near future, and of course, are on the doorstep right now. Uh, of course, that is our recap. There, we're going to get to, of course, our bowl project or prediction, or that's later on in the show. We'll talk about our bowl predictions at the end of the show. But of course, next we get into our games of the week, and of course, they're championship, conference championship games of the week. Of course, as we got some stuff rolling in from the top 25 now, from the committee, they've got some top 25 stuff rolling in now. I'll just, since we got a little bit of a break in here, I'll roll through 21 through 25 here. 25, you got NC State moves up from an unranked spot. Mississippi State with their big Egg Bowl win, they move up to 24 from unranked at 8-4. North Carolina, after their loss, drops down 6 spots to 23 at 9-3. So they'll be in a tough one against Clemson that we'll get to. And UCF stays right where they are, right at 9-3 at number 22. And Notre Dame at 21 will round out at 20. And of course, we got some other ones coming in from 16 through 20. Texas at 20 moves up 3 spots with their win. South Carolina moves up to 19 from unranked at 8-4. So a great season for them. Tulane, as we just mentioned, from moving up 1 spot from 19 to 18. UCLA moves up 1 to 17 from 18 as well. Oregon, with their loss to Oregon State in that Civil War battle, they moved down 7 spots to 16. So there's your 16.
You got to be seeing the Beavers coming up at 15, and that should mean that Oregon State's above them. So that would be something for Oregon State. It could be, if they get up to the top 15, that could be a better bowl position as well. You can't forget about that, especially as we head into our next phase of football.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you get 11 through 15 come in right at 15 is Oregon State.
Right.
9-3 season, fantastic for them. The LSU Tigers do fall down 9 spots to 14 at 9-3 with their loss on the road. So at Texas A&M, moving up 3 spots to 13 is Florida State, a good season for them at 9-3. Washington moves up one spot to 12, sneaking up in there into the top
Man,
15 at 10-2.
I thought
And
that
of
they'd
course,
be top 10.
yeah, and of course at number 11, moving up three spots is Utah at 9-3. Really, one of the top ranked 9-3 teams this year. A loss to Florida to start the year looks bad on their resume, of course, and it's kind of all over the place for them. And they've got a tough one against USC that we're going to talk about. And of course, we'll probably have a little break here for the top 10 shortly. So it is something to talk about. We get into these conference championship things, and really the makeup of this college football playoff ranking right here is kind of determined what we're looking at here in the championship weeks, Tyler. I mean, I know we're going to get to a lot of championship here, and the first one is a not too talked about one. North Texas is headed to UTSA. UTSA was ranked at 23 here. They are unranked on the college football playoff, so they are having an unranked matchup here in Conference USA. I think UTSA can seal the deal on this one pretty easily. They have the fastest growing offense, I think, outside of the Power Five. I think it'll be a good win for them. Of course, playing at home since it is in the group of five. So I've got UTSA in this one. I think they handle business pretty easily. I'm going to go 31-14 in this one, just because I think North Texas has a tough time getting the offense going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, UTSA, they're just a really balanced. They can throw the ball through the air and they can defense. So I think that at home in the Alamo Dome. I mean, North Texas, you've had a good made it all the way to the Conference USA Championship, but I can't go against my preseason pick. I had UTSA. I had UAB making the Conference USA Championship with new head coach they haven't been having this season that they hoped for. So I think that UTSA will get this one pretty easily. I think they win this one 35-17 over the Mean Green.
Yeah, and of course, we talked about the Pac-12 just a second ago with Utah. They'll be battling up against the number 4 ranked USC Trojans. We'll see where they are. Of
Yep.
course, Utah does
These
move
are
up
all
to
AP
yeah,
full
yeah.
rankings.
I mean, these are all AP. So Utah does move up one spot to 11. So we'll see how that plays out for them in this one. Of course, we'll see where USC sits at. But this is going to be a great game. I think I picked the upset in this one. I've got Utah winning this one in Vegas. I think they really have a lot of momentum in this, and they're a great football team, underrated football team. Of course, the second highest ranked 9-3 team. So really, really moving along quite well. So I've got Utah and Cam Rising. I think a lot of experienced offense here. Of course, they did get the win a couple of weeks ago in this one at home in overtime. So I think they know what's going to happen here, and I think they're going to be ready for Lincoln Riley and that Caleb Williams offense as well.
We're not surprised to see
So
Utah in the Pac-12
yeah,
championship because we both had them in the playoff before that
yeah.
season. If only they,
And think about it is this game was close before. I think Utah wins by a touchdown in this
yeah,
one. I'm gonna go 34-27. And I just feel like Utah, if they get going, is going to be hard to stop them.
yeah. I mean, we saw this game. This is a rematch, and I mean, it literally took a Utah 2-point conversion to beat USC the first time. So we'll see if they can do it again. I think that Utah's defense has to be able to come to play in this one. They can't afford to get into another shootout. I do think that Utah has a quarterback to beat USC. They already showed it with Cam Rising. He's had an up and down season. Coming into the season, I was so on Utah. I even said that Cam Rising, sprinkle a little money on him, and being in the Heisman Trophy race, but that didn't happen. And the flip side, Caleb Williams is pretty much a lock for the Heisman winner. But I got to go with the momentum. Got to ride the momentum of how hot USC has been. I think that this is going to be another high-scoring shootout as well. But in the end, like I always say, it's always tough to beat a team twice. I think that USC is going to get their revenge. It was close. It was a close battle. I expect this one to be close as well. I'll go 38-35 this time in a field goal game. I'll give the Trojans, and they book their ticket into the college football playoff.
Yeah, we'll have a little stoppage here, of course, because our next team that we're talking about is a Big 12 matchup for the Big 12 championship. 10-7 has come out. Sitting at number 10 right now is K-State that we'll be referencing to. They did move up 2 spots to number 10. They are the highest ranked 9-3 team out in the land right now. So They are sitting right there at 9-3 at number 10. At number 9, Clemson does fall down one spot after their 1 point loss at home to South Carolina. I had a feeling they weren't going to move very far, so they do move down one spot to number 9. At number 8, Penn State does move up 3 spots from 11 to 8. So the Nittany Lions will be there for a New Year's Six, possibly. It looks like it's evident. So they had a solid season at 10-2 as well. And Tennessee rounds out 7 through 10 at number 7 with their blowout win against Vanderbilt in a big one there. So I think it really is going to shape up now. Now you know where you sit at 7 through 10. So, once you get 1 through 6, we work our way backwards. So you go 6 to 1 and things. And then we'll have a lot to talk about here as they start rolling in, and as we speak, 6 and 5 roll in. So, at 6, you've got Alabama does move up 1 spot to number 6 from
answer.
7. They'll move up there. Yeah, with LSU's loss, they do take another leap up there to 1 spot. Of course, I think it's kind of evident we kind of figured out what we would know in this one, and a lot of hype around it. But at number 5, you got Ohio State does drop down 3 spots to number 5 with their loss, a blowout loss at home against Michigan. So they sit outside the top 4. So a lot to think about there with them.
The path, pretty simple. You got to root for a USC or a TCU loss, and they're in.
Absolutely, yeah. And TCU does crack that top 4. So I mean, USC does crack the top 4. They do get to the number 4 spot with a 2-point jump up there from 6 to 4. So they seem like they're going to have a battle probably against Georgia. And yeah, it will be against Georgia. Georgia does stay at 1. So Georgia will stay at 1. Michigan does stay at 2. And TCU does stay right there at 3. So I mean, there are your top 4.
I honestly
teams.
would take that playoff as it is. That would be 2 great matchups that we would get. You would get Georgia versus going up against a high-powered USC offense, Michigan, TCU. I feel like those are 2 balanced teams. They got a good defense, and they can give you a lot of trouble in the running game. They got 2 talented quarterbacks. Honestly, I would take that playoff right there, and you get really TCU, USC haven't made the playoff appearance. We saw Georgia and Michigan, last year. Georgia ended up winning the national title. But really, those are 4 new teams that we haven't seen. That would just be great for college football. And, I mean, that would honestly silence the expansion for at least a season.
Yeah, for at least a year, we get something a little different, and I'm happy about that. I'm part of the I'm Different club when it comes to the college football playoff. So, it was kind of evident what we thought was going to happen, and it did happen. So, it's one of those things where we'll just have to wait and see. Conference championships is one of those. And getting back to our conference championships, we'll go there to the Big 12 with K-State and TCU facing off. Really, this is the big dog for TCU. You're sitting at 3. You cannot lose this game. If you lose this game, you are outside looking in. So I mean, you would fall down and arguably be playing in the Sugar Bowl if that is the case. So, I think K-State has an opportunity to spoil the party. K-State has offense, and they've got defense. I mean, that's really how they win games. I think they're the best, second best defensive Big 12 team in the country. I feel like they have what it takes. You've got an experienced veteran quarterback there. A veteran running back who can't be stopped in Deuce Vaughn. So I think K-State has a real opportunity to win this game. TCU, on the other hand, here with Max Duggan and what they've had go for them, and a young, fiery offense that really just goes out there and gets it. So it'll be a great game here. I'm probably going to take TCU. I think they get the 3-point win in this one. It's very close, but it is 3 points. I'm going to go 38-35 in this one to keep TCU there in the top 4.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I mean, TCU has, scared us so many times. I know that I've been on the TCU train. I picked a couple of upsets as well. I beat them to beat Texas, but I'll, picked them to lose 1 or 2 times in the season. One of them, actually, I picked them to beat TCU to beat Kansas State. But going back to that game, it was very similar to what we just saw this past week with Oregon and Oregon State. Kansas State controlled the first half, and then TCU, you know them, they'll fight for 4 quarters and they'll do anything possible. You saw it in the Baylor game. They had to run out their kicking staff to get out there to win the game. I expect this one to bring us some fireworks. I think this is going to be the game of the weekend here in the Big 12 championship. This in the Pac-12 and the Big 12 is pretty much a de facto playoff semifinal. USC wins their end, TCU wins their end. But for Kansas State, they're pretty much locked into the Sugar Bowl, win or lose, because TCU wins, so that means that Kansas State, they'll be the highest ranked Big 12 team. I don't really see any others. I mean, Texas, they're not going to fall below them. So Kansas State's going to be locked into the Sugar Bowl, win or lose here, because even if they game and TCU does playoff, they would get the bid because they won the Big 12 championship. So there's a lot to play for both teams, like you mentioned. I mean, Max Duggan versus Adrian Martinez, and like you mentioned, Deuce Vaughn. So there's a lot of veteran, both on defense and offense for K-State. TCU, they've just been a team that you really can't pick against, but I am. I went with that pick in the sports scramble. I'm going to stick with it. I'll go K-State. Pulling off an upset. I mean, this has just been a season of chaos, and I feel like we're not quite finished yet. So I'm going to go with State 31-30. They get the 1-point victory in what will be a close game that could come down to the last possession.
Yeah, that can't get much closer than a 1 point because there are no half points handed out in the sport of football. So yeah, that's a bold pick for you there. Of course, these teams are very closely matched as they did play earlier in the year. I mean, it's really tough. I mean, K-State had a huge lead in this one and blew it in the second half, and they want some revenge. So I see no problem with your upset pick there. But of course, we're going to go down to the itty bitties, of course, once again, and we're going to Toledo and Ohio facing off in the MAC championship. We got to love our MACtion a little bit. So Toledo and Ohio are going to go at it in this one. I feel like this is a sure for me. I feel good about it just because of their time they've spent in this bowl game or in this championship game. I'm sorry. And I'm going to go with the Toledo Rockets. I think they win this one. It's been an up and down season for Ohio. They're just that number 2 team that get in, and that's the thing about it. I like Toledo in this one in a big win here. I think they put up 30 easily, so I'm gonna go 33-17. I think they can handle business just fine.
Yeah, this is a class of the MAC right here, the Toledo Rockets and the Ohio Bats. I think this is going to be a great game to start off the weekend here on the MACtion. The MACtion's always been great. Everyone has been rolling on Tuesday night and Wednesday night, and by the time that Saturday rolls, they're already planning it for next week, and that's the good thing about the MAC. But I know that you mentioned that Ohio has been, oh gosh, I hate that I said that now. Ohio fans are going to be coming at me. But Ohio has been 9-3, and they're I feel like a lot of people are going to pick the Rockets, but I'm going to lean with the green here. I'm going to go with the Bobcats. I think Ohio gets the job done. Toledo has been there, done that in the MAC championship. I think it's time and they get it done. They win the MAC. Give me them to win 33-28 against the Rockets.
A close one there. So yeah, I think that's going to be a good one in the MACtion. We love our MACtion, of course, as you mentioned. So we'll be paying attention to that one with our eyes glued to the TV. And of course, when we're glued to the TV, we got to go to the Sun Belt Fun Belt. And of course, it is the Coastal Carolina. They're playing against Troy here. Troy will host the Sun Belt Championship in this one. So I think, James Madison did put up a really good fight in the division against Coastal Carolina. Of course, they're not eligible for championship because of
give them the opportunity to play for a championship, but they won too, and they won that division.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like James Madison will be the team in the future to give Coastal Carolina some trouble, and I think Coastal knows it. So this is their last opportunity to do it with less stress, and I think Coastal does get it done on the road at Troy. Troy's a tough place to play, against the Trojans. I think that Coastal can win this game by a touchdown. So I'm going to go with a touchdown win. I'm going to go 28-21 in this one for Coastal Carolina to win this one.
Yeah, there's a lot of firepower on both offenses. I mean, Grayson McCall for Coastal Carolina, I feel like has been there for 10 years already for the Chanticleers. And like you mentioned, this could be the last chance. James Madison has already shown their might. Last week, they blew the doors off of this team, 41-7. It wasn't even close. Troy, on the other hand, took this against Arkansas State, a team that has talent but just hasn't put together this season on staff. We're having another disagreement here. I'm going to go Troy in this one. They're a heavy favorite. They're a 10-point favorite. I checked Vegas before we did this show. So I think that this will be ultimately a close game. I mean, Coastal Carolina has just been up and down. I just can't head around. So I'm going to go with Troy. I think that their defense will be able to shut down that high-powered offense that Coastal brings. So I'll go Troy in this one. I'll go 31-20. I think that they get the job done, and the Troy Trojans will be your Sun Belt champs.
Yeah, great season for them. Turn around to a 10-2 season, so it'd be a fantastic Sun Belt championship win for them in that one. And of course, we're going to go to the American next. UCF sits at 22 right now. Tulane does bump them up one spot there to 17. So this will be a great game here. I think UCF, like we said, is like solving a Rubik's Cube. I'm not sure what to think about them in the Knights. I just them ranked just feels weird with the losses that they've had. So I'm going to roll with Tulane in this one again. I've been on the green wave most of the year, and I'm going to stick with them. I think Tulane being at home is the difference, of course, and I think they jump out to a quick lead in this one. UCF, their defense has to get going earlier. They're going to get behind. So I think Tulane takes advantage of the opportunity with a veteran quarterback there. Fantastic defense. UCF has trouble scoring the football in this one, and I'm going to have Tulane win it pretty big here. So I'm going to go 38-14 in a big win in the American Conference.
Yeah, we saw the same matchup like I mentioned earlier in the show too, in the same stadium. UCF dominated that game. I know it was only a touchdown win, 38-31. Both offenses had their way, but Tulane's not going to make that same mistake again. They won their against UCF. That was probably one of their worst games of the Southern Miss game. So I'm sticking with the Green Wave this week. I'm not picking against them anymore, probably until the bowl season, whoever they face. But I'm going to go with the Green Wave in this one against John Ross Plumlee. I think that they'll look at I know that they looked at the film after that game. They're going to learn what they did wrong. They're going to put it on the field. And I think they win. I think it's going to be close. I don't think it's going to be as big as you're projecting. I think UCF is still a very good football team. I know that they've been a hard one to predict, like Coastal Carolina in the Sun Belt. But I'm going to go Tulane in the 34-27. I think they get the touchdown victory at home and claim the ACC Championship and head their way on to New Year's 6.
And we'll head out west. Fresno State and Boise State will be taking it on in the Mountain West Conference. I think this is the biggest curveball of them all in this big heap of mess is the Mountain West. And, of course, Fresno turned their season around after an abysmal start to the year, playing some tough teams. They turned out an 8-4 season. For Boise State, undefeated in the Mountain West Conference, and I think that's the big fact looking at this game here. Boise State will be playing on the blue field at home. I think that they win this game convincingly. I think they win by 2 touchdowns in this game. Boise is a pesky team that really can get it done on both sides of the football. I'm going to give them the 35-21 win in this one. It's a great season for them and a big bounce back. I did watch their game on the blue field with the blue unis, and that was kind of fun to watch. But I'm going to roll with the Broncos.
Yeah, Boise State in the preseason was not getting any love. Air Force was a majority pick, and they just been under the radar and all the way into an 8-0 record in the side. Fresno State to win their division, even without the starting quarterback, he got injured early in the season, was out for the year. So to be able to go through that adversity is definitely huge. But we're going to pick against Boise State at the blue field, especially in a big game like this. Boise State, I think, is going to dominate Fresno State. I think that Fresno State has the offense to contend with them, but their defense really won't have any answers. So I'll go Boise State in this one. I'll go 35-21. I think that Boise State controls this game from start to finish, and they'll claim the Mountain West title. I don't know how that they got in this. I feel like Boise State's Mountain West. Might as well call it the Blue Mountain West.
Yes, yeah. Boise State has run this conference for a long time, and I expect them to win this one convincingly, as do you. Of course, to the big bad SEC next. This matchup is not as
Adjust your
crazy as
rankings.
we, yeah, not as crazy as we imagined it all to be. Of course, LSU does fall down outside of the top 10, obviously, and outside of the top 15 as well. So I think this was going to be a big game. I mean, if LSU does win last week, this game might have playoff implications for LSU. I think Georgia would get in regardless, just a matter of where they would have been in the top four, and we've speculated on that for weeks. But of course, they did not come to pass. So think I think Georgia wins this game pretty convincingly. The issue with LSU is they're not healthy. It's staying healthy. I mean, they had the Ohio State bug, in the sense that they need to get healthy, they need to get right. Um, they look good for 5-6 weeks there, and really were rolling, and then all of a sudden the wheels fell off. So I think LSU is going to go back to the drawing board, knowing they had a good season, knowing that Brian Kelly is your guy going forward. And for Georgia, I think it's going to be another cakewalk here. I'm sorry, guys, but yeah, I think Georgia wins this one. I'm gonna go 38-17. Just too much firepower from Georgia on both sides of the football.
Yeah, you don't have to this one, but yeah, like you mentioned, this has lost a lot of black, especially for LSU's loss to a 4-7 at Texas A&M. Just an embarrassing loss. Not only is this like I know that I was saying for weeks that LSU wasn't going to be in the first place, but 2 weeks ago I was getting a sense, that maybe this game could be closer. LSU is going to be playing for a potential playoff berth. Georgia, if they lose, they're in the playoff no matter what. So LSU probably could have more to play. They still have a lot to play for. Win gets them a berth, but this would have one of the sets in college football. I mean, Georgia's a 17.5-point favorite. No one's really going to – I don't think that anyone's going to be picking LSU unless your name is Chet. So he's probably going to be like the only one on this planet Earth picking LSU. But you don't have to be sorry I have LSU winning the exact same score as you do. Not Georgia, actually, 38-17. I think that the Dogs – this one they show once again why that they're going to be in the national championship discussion again. I just feel like LSU's offense hasn't been too consistent, and you're up against one of the best defenses in the country. Not a recipe for success if you're the purple and gold.
Yes, and
I
as
agree
our
with my
comment,
Can we
yeah,
talk?
as Tyler's mom says, yeah, we'll stop talking about it as of right now. Of course,
and then we'll
toward,
get to it at 8:00 on SEC Talk once again.
yeah. So Tyler has to get to it again, and I have
We'll go more on that
axed
since we're
that, and
SEC based.
yes, and I have cut it down right there. And of course, moving on. No stress needed in this one. Purdue and Michigan are facing off in Indianapolis for the Big Ten Championship. Per usual, your weak team in the Big Ten West is up against your powerhouse Big Ten East team. Issue is here, I want to keep going back to that Illinois game against Michigan. And Illinois played a really good game there, a really good offense. Defense played fantastic. Only problem is here is Purdue's defense is not as stout as Illinois' defense.
Not as good as last year's defense for Loftus.
No, yeah. I feel like this game here for the Boilermakers, of course they want to spoil Michigan's party here, and really if you spoil this, no Big Ten team is in,
No.
regardless of what happens here. And I think you reopen the door for somebody like somebody like Alabama. So I think there's a big chance there that happens. So if Purdue wants to win this game, they got to be able to move the football. You've got a veteran quarterback in Aiden O'Connell. I know you were really high on him to start the season, and Purdue's season kind of fell backwards a long ways, but they still do come out on top of the Big Ten West. Just knowing that everybody else has had a rough season. So I'm going to take Michigan in it though. They're the number 2 team in the country. I can't go against them only because of them putting up 45 on the road in Columbus. Uh, Michigan gets the big win here. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go 42-24. Um, it just seems like another blowout win here. They're able to move the football, and they'll be back to back Big Ten champions.
Yeah, I was high on Purdue. I picked them to win the Big Ten West, and here they are. I mean, for several weeks, is it going to be Illinois? Is it going to be Wisconsin? Is it Iowa? And then all of a sudden, it's Purdue, especially with Iowa losing to Nebraska last week and Purdue taking care of business against Indiana. So, I mean, Michigan, we just saw what they did against a really good Ohio State team. They put it on them. If they can run the football effectively, then they're going to be a hard team to beat. And like you mentioned, Aiden O'Connell has been up and he has to play a perfect game for Purdue to even have a chance. One, the only hope that's given me on Purdue's side of really accomplishing this is that Michigan has the number next to their name. Every time that Purdue has played someone in the top 5, they always pull out something out of their hat. The 2 top teams that they beat last year, Iowa was ranked number 2. Michigan State was also ranked number 2, and now Michigan is now ranked number 2. But in the end, Michigan's going to flex their muscle. They're going to win this one 41-17. Too much Wolverines in this one. Blake Corum doesn't even have to be healthy in this one. I think that Donovan Edwards. Honestly, if I were Michigan, I would just rest up Blake Corum. I mean, until the college football playoff. That way you have your best player. And then, put your guy on the field. You know, Donovan Edwards can do the job. The way that J.J. McCarthy has been playing down the stretch. I mean, this Michigan team, I mean, like I mentioned, are they better than last year's team?
I think so. I think Michigan is better this year all around position wise. I think they are a better football team now than they were a year ago. And of course, closing out our championship weekend of games here is the ACC Championship game. The number 10 Clemson Tigers, they are no longer number 10. And North Carolina, they're at 24. I just feel like this game, I won't spend long on it. I've been king of the ACC recently, so I'm going to stick with it. I think North Carolina wins this game. It's a weird one. It's in Charlotte. Uh, Clemson has struggled against teams. North Carolina is still a good team. I think the Carolinas go undefeated in this one, and North and South Carolina both get back-to-back big wins over the Clemson Tigers. And Clemson falls down a long way looking at the preseason projection for next season based on this, and they get a cruddy bowl game as the result of it.
I cannot get a grasp of both of these teams at all. And Clemson offense has been very bad. I mean, Will Shipley has definitely been a positive sign. North Carolina, their defense started out as one of the worst defenses, and all of a sudden, going. I know that they lost in double overtime last week against NC State, and then lost to Georgia Tech. I don't even know how this team is still in the top 25. This is not a top 25 team at all. I was thinking about pulling off the upset with North Carolina, but I just can't. They just have been looking awful these past 2 weeks. I love Drake May and what he's been doing this season, but I think they're run-ins here. I think that Clemson wins the ACC championship once again. This is going to be a defensive battle. I don't really have a lot of points. I do have this one being close still. I'll go 24-21.
Yeah, as I failed to mention before, I got a little carried away with the rankings before, but our segment for our games of the week, of course, is brought to you by Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company. You guys can check out all of their fun beer and food over there in H-Town in Houston. Great little scenery over there if you guys want to go check them out and all their goodies. I know they're going to have some great stuff rolling out here as we get towards the end of the year. Some winter stuff. Of course, you like your lagers in the winter and stuff like that. So they are going to be having all that for you guys over at www.buffbrew.com. That is www.buffbrew.com. Tyler, AP top 25 risers and fallers here. Give us one
Actually,
riser and one
switch to
faller
the
here.
college football
Yeah,
top 25
it'll be the college football playoff top 25 here. And who is your riser and your faller? I'll throw them both at you. Give me your riser first and then your faller.
All right, so there's a ton of risers in this one, but I'm going to go to the Beavers. I mean, what a win it was in court. or in the highlighter bowl. They both wore all green, and Oregon State pulled out the all orange. If only they had orange helmet to go with it. But what a program, builder this was. What a season it's been. It's definitely going to build to next season. We could see Oregon State being one of the dark horse picks to take the Pac-12 championship, and they might be the talk of the town once USC and UCLA leave for the Big Ten. I mean, this could be Oregon State's conference to win, but moving 6 spots, number 15, they're in a great position to get a good bowl win. My father is the team right ahead of them is LSU. What an embarrassing loss it was. They just fell flat. I mean, the defense didn't really they didn't want to tackle Chain for some reason. I mean, that was one of the better running backs in the SEC. So not only is this going to hurt, it's like hope of, obviously it crushed their playoff hopes, but I mean, it's not, I don't know, it's really going into the Sugar Bowl. They have to beat Georgia for that to happen. And with South Carolina nipping at their heels, they could take their spot in the Citrus. So it could be falling all the way to the Rye Quest Bowl with a loss against Georgia, depending on the rankings next week.
Yeah, for me, my riser has got to be the South Carolina Gamecocks with their big win over Clemson. I think they're my riser.
I knew that you were going to go with them.
Yeah. And as far as fallers go, my faller is a tough one. There's been a lot of teams that have fallen as a result of some weird losses. I can't pick the same team as you, which is tough because really LSU's loss is really the toughest one. I mean,
if you want to, go for it.
Yeah, and it really is the toughest one of them all because it really pulls them way out. But I'll go with Oregon. I think Oregon's loss really dashes their chances for the Rose Bowl. It dashes their chances for a lot of things. So their loss looks really bad for them in that one. So I think that is going to be a tough one for them. Of course, moving on from our risers and fallers, we'll go over to our news segment here. And it, of course, is surrounded by the coaching carousel, and it is off and rolling before the season is even over. Yes, it is going around town already.
Like NCAA 14 again with the coaching carousels back.
With some big programs here. Tyler has a fun little typo on the screen and put Wisconsin twice, and he doesn't see it. So, folks, that's going to be a great joke.
Hold up. I got to change that real quick.
But in other news, our news segment is brought to you by Fanatics. If you guys want to go over there and get all of your team gear for the bowl season coming up. If your team's there in the top 4, go get you some merch for the bowl season and, of course, for the college football playoff, and you'll have it there and ready for you once the new year rolls around. Of course, a lot of good Christmas gifts out there that you guys can get now. It was Cyber Monday yesterday, and I'm sure Fanatics had some great stuff going on.
They did. They had 30% off site-wide. I wish we were live. That would have been a great time to plug Fanatics.
But I'm sure we're probably back to 65% off
on the sure
website.
Are.
Yeah, so if you guys want to go over there and get their merch over there at Fanatics, you can check that out. And, of course, the link to that is in our description of our show. Tyler, moving to our news, Hugh Freeze becomes the next coach over at the Auburn Tigers. I'll run through all 3 of them. Luke Fickell is the next head coach for the Wisconsin Badgers, leaving Cincinnati, and Matt Rule rolls it out there with the Cornhuskers in Nebraska.
Not Wisconsin.
Out of those, out of those 3, what do you think is the biggest for that program? I mean, overall.
I think for me, it's Luke Fickell to Wisconsin. I already said on Sunday's show, this is a slam dunk hire. I feel like to Auburn is second. I feel like Matt Rule has always been a wait and see for me. I know that he was able to build up program. It's 2 of the toughest programs to win at Temple. But Nebraska, I mean, they're just rolling through coaches. They have a lot of talent and still can't even make a bowl game. So I think that will give them a couple of years. I think that off the bat, though, the way that the Big Ten West has shaped up, getting a coach like Luke Fickell, what he was able to do in Cincinnati. I mean, he was the first guy to get a Group of 5 team in the playoff, and that was hard to do. I mean, he's got just look at that team last year. I mean, there's NFL guys. You know, the most notable one is Sauce Gardner. I mean, the Jets are the turnaround that they've had. You could, you know, on especially on the defensive side, has gone around Sauce Gardner. But Luke Fickell to Wisconsin, I feel like Wisconsin is going to be the monster in the Big Ten West and could give people trouble. Not only the Big Ten West, but I could see them, you know, whenever they face off against Michigan and Ohio State. I mean, it's not. I mean, Luke Fickell, he's a defensive guy, so Wisconsin's going to be able to control that side of the ball. The question is Luke Fickell going to bring in an offensive coordinator that can, you know, run a 2020 offense, not you know, Wisconsin offense that we saw with Graham Mertz, you know, losing to Minnesota in that game. But I think that Luke Fickell, that's a slam dunk hire. So Wisconsin A+.
Absolutely, yeah. All three of these programs got some good coaches, some former big coaches.
And I couldn't even get up words of how it was. They're having me losing sentences over here.
But of course, yeah, you know, some coaches return back to their old conferences. Some move on to bigger and better things. Some return back to the college football scene. And of course, you know, that is the news there. I feel like we do have a question, but I wanna do this because I do have a speed bump here. But we are at an hour for the show, and of course, you guys know that we do our bowl projections for the next week. But I do have a speed bump. I have to go vote before the polls close. I have a local election going on here in a runoff election. I gotta go vote in. So they close in about 20 minutes. So I got to run down and go vote. But yeah, we'll kick off obviously our next show with some of the recap there, and of course we'll close out with the bowl projections because
Well, if you want to leave, and I'll close it out with a question.
yeah, yeah, and Tyler of course can close it out for the question there. I do have to run, but yeah, we'll go right off from there. I feel like there's going to be a lot of good bowls there for teams to take advantage of. And of course, Tyler, you take it away as always. And I will see you guys, of course, next week.
On Monday. I mean, we're going to be talking about all the bowl games. I'll have them here. So, all right. So now that he's gone, we'll be going to our question of the day, which is who do we have making the New Year's Six bowl games? So we'll start with the college football playoffs as we're going to start with the Peach Bowl. This is where I have Georgia, the SEC champs. I think that they handled their business in Atlanta. Weekend. It's going to be a majority of Georgia fans there. I mean, it's in Atlanta, far of a trip down there from Athens. So I think that Georgia undeniably will be the number one seed. And going from, you know, to the Peach Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl, that is also in Atlanta as well. So Georgia's going to want the home field advantage. So I think that's an easy pick for me. And then the number 4 seed, I have Ohio State backdoor in their way. I did have upsetting TCU in the Big 12 championship. So with that loss, TCU will be out, and that'll open the door for Ohio State to get in there. And then for the Fiesta Bowl is the other college football playoff semifinal. I have number 2, Michigan. I think they take care of business against Purdue in the Big Ten championship. And number 3, I have USC. I think that USC with Caleb Williams, the Heisman Trophy winner, which I am assuming is pretty much a lock. So those are my top 4. I have Georgia 1. Number 2 is Michigan. 3 is USC. And then number 4, Ohio State. So I have 2 teams from the Big Ten making the college football playoff. But we will see how things shake out next week's show when we, you know, preview all the bowl games going from the bottom that starts on December 16th all the way into the college football playoffs. So now we'll go into the other New Year's Six bowl games. We'll start into the Cotton Bowl. All the largest, there is some conference tie-ins that we'll into. But in the Cotton Bowl, this is where I have Penn State. They're ranked number 8 right now. I think that undeniably that they are a lock for the Cotton Bowl. So I have Penn State in the Big Ten. And then I have them in Tulane, which I have winning the American Athletic Conference Championship game this weekend against UCF. I think they get their revenge against UCF. So we'll have Tulane versus in the Cotton Bowl. And then going on to the Orange Bowl, this is where you get some of your conference tie-ins. It's usually the ACC champion and the highest ranked SEC team outside of the Sugar Bowl. So I'll have Tennessee making this one. We'll see that I'll have another team from the SEC making the Sugar Bowl. This is where see they're sitting at a good spot at number 7. They don't play any more games, so I think that they're going to stay put at number 7 going into the bowl season. So I think that even with Hendon Hooker, I think that they nod with the Orange Bowl. The selection committee will definitely love Tennessee having that. And I have facing off against another Orange team. I have the Clemson Tigers also going into the Orange Bowl. That will be your champs from the ACC, so they get the automatic bid. Whoever wins the ACC championship game will get into that. So I have Tennessee versus Clemson and the all orange and the orange beating up in Miami. And then the next one is the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. It is an 11 o'clock a.m. kickoff. These teams will have to grab their morning coffee and then also make some beignets while they're at it as well. But I have Alabama. They'll be the highest ranked team outside of the SEC champion, which will be Georgia. They're sitting at a pretty good spot. So barring an LSU upset, I have Alabama in the Sugar Bowl facing off against Kansas State, who will be your Big 12 champs. I have them beating TCU. I think that is undeniably will be your. It's pretty much, honestly, it's a lock to me. Alabama versus Kansas State will most likely. I would have to give that at least a 90% chance of happening. That's going to be Kansas State versus Alabama. That for sure just feels like a lock. No, like I mentioned earlier in the show, no matter what happens, if Kansas State even loses or wins, they'll be in the Sugar Bowl because they'll be the highest ranked Big 12 team. And then playing the Rose Bowl, it's usually the Pac-12 champion versus the Big 10 champion. But since I have two of those teams making it to the playoff, I'll go with the runner-up. So I have Utah versus I have a little bit of disagreement here. So I actually have to move Penn State to Rose Bowl now that I think about it, since I have Ohio State and Michigan. So I have Penn State going up against Utah, and then in the Cotton Bowl, I'll have TCU going up against Tulane. So those are your New Year's Six bowl predictions. And like we mentioned before, Jacob had to hop off the show here. We'll get into more of our bowl season as well. This is the end of our bowl predictions. So that's our final Year 6 bowl projections. We'll have the actual release next weekend. Usually the show kicks at 11 a.m. on ESPN, and they pretty much have a show going on until 3 o'clock, and then we'll get into the New Year's Six bowl games. So that will do it for us here on College Football Coast to Coast. Like Jacob mentioned at the beginning of the show, we had to move it to the Tuesday night slate. I had a Pelicans game that I worked last night, and then Jacob was busy schoolwork as well, and he also had work as well. So, but next week, like I mentioned to him, we'll be back on our Monday night slate. All of our schedules should be lined up. So next week's show, that'll do it for our conference championship preview. We'll get into the recaps of the conference championship next week before we dive into our bowl season. So we hope everyone has a day. Be sure to check out Sports Scramble on Sunday night. Monday nights, this is when we roll, but Tuesday nights this week, and then SEC Talk will roll in a couple of hours here at 8 o'clock Central Time. So definitely be sure to take one. And for Tyler, for College Football Coast to Coast, hope everyone has a good night. Enjoy your college football week.